Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Human Codes. I believe we're at part 6 of this CRUD application flask project. I will link the URL below for the videos if you want to follow part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and part 6. Like and subscribe, of course. If you're new to this channel and you just stumbled upon this video, I'm a junior DevOps engineer. However, this site is dedicated to kind of teaching the fundamental tools you need if you want to branch into software development or DevOps engineering. Later on, as this channel grows, we will look into other skill set that may get you ready for things like, for example, data scientist or whatever kind of coding projects that you want to do. But this is the first. We're creating a CRUD application. And if you were from the previous video, then you should know that, well, at least I hope if you're coding along also, you come to the point where so we've got it to the point where our front page is working once the website is initiated. Let me just go ahead and turn on my virtual environment. Turn that on for you. Then activate. And just a little bit of background info about that. So the reason why I do then bin activate, so the dot firstly signifies this current directory. I believe there's a video where I've created which kind of teaches you the basics of navigating around a Linux environment. If I haven't done that, I will create that video, but I'm sure I have. And how to kind of like just create files, navigate through the Linux environment. I think that's a skill you should definitely learn. And once you get more comfortable, learn how to write automation script, bash script and scripts that will kind of take care of background installations for you and maintenance for you. That's a really good skill you need for DevOps also. I don't think it goes without saying. But yeah, so what you're basically telling it to do is, like, in the current directory, look for a file or a folder called them. Within that folder, within that directory, there should be another directory called bin. And within that directory, you should look for a script called or a file called activate, which will contain the information you need. And so what you're essentially doing, if you look here, once you've installed your VM, if you haven't got your virtual environment sorted, go back to the very first video, part 1, where I essentially give you a tutorial on how to create the VM. But if you go into your VM, you go into your bin activate, this is the script that we're literally running. So when we ask it to essentially activate, there's a script here which, let me see if I can actually point it out. And then PSI. Yeah, I think for the current level you're at, the only thing you need to worry about is the fact that this script will essentially take care of activating your virtual environment. I guess I will do a tutorial actually on how to write bash script files like this, because I think like an example of a function within kind of the Linux environment within bash script. And so you would write something like this, and there's a few terms here that may be unfamiliar to you. For example, exactly what this means, or what this variable signifies, and how it's all set up. And then the if statement is written a little bit different. It starts with like if, and then with the statement it needs, and then the conditions that it has to satisfy, and then with the fee. These are quite important things, but there'll be a separate video I will create where we'll kind of dive into writing bash scripts and seeing the differentiation between that and Python and other coding languages also. But just for the purpose of this video, make sure you've got your virtual environment installed, and you can check that you're ready to go by doing Python 3 app.py, which will essentially execute the entire script. And as you can see there, the whole script is ready to go. So if we were to go to our home page, our local host on our browser, and search for it, we'll be able to see the exact path or see the website up. So just, yeah, like I said, in our example, we would have got to this stage, particularly here where we have our front page. In this particular video, we're going to work on the logic of the site, of the function, or of the application. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what should happen, and I'm going to demonstrate here what should happen when someone wants to, because this is a book movie app. The point of this application is that when someone visits the website and they want to go ahead and enter details about a movie or a book, and then that information should be persisted to a database. And if there's a relationship between the book and the movie, they can also add that information in. So the first thing they need is a place to go and enter those information. And if you bear in mind, on our previous video, we created our forms. These are the information that essentially Flask will be looking out for when they're entering us within the database. I guess the rows that needs to be filled is the short content bit, the genre, the author, and the book name. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I was actually looking at the indentations. Yeah, be careful of the indentation, guys, and make sure, else when you write the script, when you execute the script, you may have issues, essentially. So today we're going to work on the essentially the logic of it. So in your routes.py, your routes.py will be not in your root directory. However, it would be within the application directory. When you go into your application directory, you should see your route. If you haven't actually seen it, you should create it and have these imports available. The imports that we will also be required to have, which I will list them as we go, as we kind of literally write the code from here. So the first we're going to focus on what should happen, how they should post information about, for example, the book that they're writing. So we're going to keep it fairly simple. We're going to call the function post, and always, this is a good opportunity to learn how you create a function in Python. Also remember here that the URL, we're going to change the URL, so they're not going to hit essentially the first page. They're going to hit a specific page, which we're going to call that page post. They're going to hit the post directory, and then because we're doing something different we're not getting information from the database, we're literally posting to the database. You need to specify the methods for Flask to understand exactly what you'll be doing, essentially. So firstly, when they go on the website, they'll be able to see the form. So you essentially probably want to put a get anyway, a get function there, and then to allow you to post to the database. So once they've entered information onto the website, onto the application, and they've clicked submit, it should send that bundle of information or that dictionary of information to the database, and that's when you need to put post. Just for simplicity, keep it in capital letters, and then of course you have your function. And the first thing you want to call is you want to create an object of the book movie form that we created. So the first thing you want to do, you want to begin to create an object of that function, of that class, as I should say. I believe it was a class we created the forms in. Yeah, it was a class. So you want to create an object from that, and you call it by so you literally call what the class is called, book form bracket. And what we're telling it is basically that, so the next thing you want to do to realistically use this form application, what you're basically going to tell it is that once the person, so especially when you're coding your own project, always kind of think forward in the sense that once they're on the site, what should they be able to do? And so in this case, once they're on a site and they want to write and post something about, I guess, a book that they've read, they should be able to have a place where they can type in the book name, the author name, the genre, and then the short content. And if all of those things are satisfied, and essentially if all of those things are satisfied, then it should add that to the database. So you want to write a function, an if statement here, to say that if all of those are satisfied. So the first thing you want to say is if the form so if this object here, and then you want to, the way you check to make sure it's satisfied, as in it follows the condition. So bear in mind, this is the condition that we want it to follow. We want the book name to be in a string, so they can't add it as a number. If the book name is even if the book name is even called 13, to be fair, because it's a string field, whatever they input, it will actually just put in a database, because it will put the quotation marks around it. If you're not aware of that, it will literally put the quotation marks around it. So once it's done that, it will go through the validators that it must have, which is 2 to 30 characters. And so if it violates that, this bit will kind of check that for you. So you want to say validate underscore submit as the function will be calling to make sure that they're adhering to the condition that we've set. And if that's the case, then we want to take that information and send that to, the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a variable, and then we're going to call on our models. So on our models, this is what it must satisfy: book, author name, genre name, child name. So we're gonna say, basically, once you get to that bit, then we'll just create a variable called for post data, and then we're gonna call our models books, which is what our table essentially will be looking for. So essentially, once they've entered this information, you'll send it to the database. Flask will look within the database and it will look for a table called books, because that's what our table here is literally called books right there. So it will look for that table and it will say, okay, cool, I've got information about the book name, the author name, the genre, and the short content. And that's exactly what you need in order to write to the book. That's exactly what you need in order to write to the table. So it will then fill in appropriately with these places. And in that case, we will then go ahead and we will satisfy those conditions. So the first one, it needs the book name. Make sure your spelling is literally accurate to how it's written here. So you need a book name first of all, and then you call the function form dot book name. So form, firstly, is telling us the form that the person has filled. Collect that information. In Django, for example, you would get something like, you can use something called clean data or get. You can just call it get function, but we'll go into details on another project when we talk about Django. So in this particular instance, you have your form and some book name dot, and then the data. From there, it takes that data from the book form, which is the form that they have here. So the information that they filled here on the website, I believe it will make more sense once we start to piece the whole website together and you see how it all kind of divides and adds together, essentially. But yeah, so it will take that data that you've entered in, and then it will equate it will essentially equate that book name title of the table. It will equate the value of that form to it. And the same thing with the author name. It will do the same thing there also. Dot author name dot data. Make sure your spelling is correct. Else, if there's any incorrect spelling or any kind of issues with the way you spell, the way you've written things, it won't work. You will get quite a number of errors. And then and also make sure, that's why I would advise following accurately to what I'm doing here. That way, if you're making a mistake, you can literally just go back on the video and actually just add your amend your information. I think the reason why I say that, obviously some of you might be quite independent. You want to be able to tailor what I'm doing to your own project. If you have some level of experience in kind of creating application, then feel free to do that and let me know how it goes within the comments. But I do remember when I started learning how to code about 2 years ago, figuring out why your application or your function or your code isn't working at the very beginning is one of the most, I guess, off-putting things you can never come across, because of the fact that you don't entirely understand the code in the first place, and then you're told that you don't know where it's going wrong or why it's going wrong, and so you end up going online and for example, things like Stack Overflow, you end up going online and reading sometimes very brilliant solutions. However, you don't really understand how they apply to what you're doing, and it can take a long time. I mean, I remember back about 2 years ago, I was sometimes sitting on a single problem for about, I'd be at like 6 hours, and often the solution was literally something like I guess something was outdated in the module, and so you had to go back to the configuration of the files and amend certain things. But for a new beginner, that's a wild concept to understand, and so often I'll be sitting there for hours and hours just trying to understand it. And that's where you need a passion for this. I think it's quite important making sure you can go ahead and you can read and read documentations. Reading documentation, I think, is some of the best ways to understand exactly where you've gone wrong and where to rectify your issue. And so yeah, so the next thing will be short content. I mean, I know I'm kind of preaching on being able to make sure there's you're spelling things correct. So I'm hoping I've actually spelled everything correctly and not made any errors. I'm also kind of going against my notes I've made from this project. So you've got that there, and then that will wrap up. So as long as you've satisfied all those conditions with an if statement, if it's satisfied, then what do you then want it to do? That's just how if statements say. If you have an if statement that says, in this sentence, if there's a 5 in this sentence, like there's a number 5 in this sentence, do something with it. That's one if statement. There's no point having an if statement if it doesn't do something, if it satisfies that if statement, or if it doesn't satisfy that. So in this situation, we're going to say, if it satisfies the condition of validating on submit, then connect to the database, take the session that we're filling the forms in, and essentially add it to the database, and you will add post data. You literally add everything here, everything in that in this function here. So you add data, and then once it's added it, you need to commit it. One thing about Flask, it's like once you've written to it, you need to save it, and that's what you do. You commit it, and you do database db session dot commit, and you call that function there, and it will do that. And once it's committed that, you want to, if successful, I would say you want it to send. Personally, I think what will be a good indicator, especially if someone's added something to your website and it's been successfully added. Normally when you create your registration for a website, for example, and you've successfully created it, it will take you to a different page. It doesn't leave you on that page. So we will say, in that situation, redirect us to and then in this bit you need a URL for, which is a shortcut essentially, but redirect us to the book page, where essentially redirect us to this page, this HTML page, and it will redirect them. However, if it fails, which can happen, if they don't validate and it doesn't work, then in that situation, print an error for us so that we will know at least what's going on. So print errors, and then if they made an error and they made a mistake, I think for just the purpose of this CRUD application, we just say just return them, just leave them on that page. Don't take them anywhere else. Just leave them on this page. Return. And then the way we'll do is render template. So it will render a certain template, and we'll say post.html, and then title post. So that'll be the title. It will substitute this title. So everything in here, it will pass to the HTML, and then this will be a very well. It will pass to HTML, and we'll show that when we work on the HTML side of it, and it will also pass the form in. Form equals form. Make sure you're spelling this correct. I think there's something I should point out also. It occurred to me to point something out here. So yeah, it will redirect. When it redirects here, it will actually redirect to a function called book, which we'll write that function in also. The book function, essentially, it's where the books will be displayed. It's the page that the books will be displayed in. I guess whilst we're here, we might as well write the code for the book function. So we will say, in this situation, say function, but I need to tell it how it will access that. So app.route, and then book. So once it will hit this URL right here. So once, if they have successfully added everything there, it will look for this URL, it will boom, and then it will drop them to that page, essentially. And so the way they'll be able to see what's on there, that the way they'll be able to know that the information has been added to the table, is that we'll have a small we'll have a small kind of variable, or a kind of variable that will say to them, it will literally just be an instruction to say books.query. So when you query, this is like an SQL syntax. Essentially, you're literally passing, give me everything on the database relating to the books table. So going to the, you're basically just telling the database that send me back every information on the database with the table books, and it will send that and give it as a result of the database of this variable. We'll call it book data, so that's a little bit different from our function. And then in that situation, we'll then say return, and then render template, return, send everything there to the book.html page, and then we'll do that with a title also. We'll give a title of we'll call it book page, and then we'll do post, which is the post that it will be given it will be posting will literally be the book data. Yeah. So yeah, that's let me save that. We'll do the same. So obviously we made a few errors. Well, it's not really errors as such. It's just the fact that we haven't completely called functions in. So it's seen syntax errors with the author name. I wouldn't worry too much actually. Yeah, we should worry because of the fact that it's it should be for, not from. Let's just see if it will be able to tell us if there's any other issues. Let's see. Author name _ form. I mean, the issue here it will probably be quite simple, in the sense that we haven't done all our imports yet, so we haven't actually on the top here. What we do is I'll add all the imports that we need here. So the first thing you need is your app. You need to import your app, which we did in the previous video, but we also need to import our database, which is the DB we need here. And then we need to import our books and our movie from the model. So we go from application. So it will tell you, look in the application directory, and then within that you will see there's some models, there's a model class, and then within that import for us a class called or module called books, and a module called movies, and it will call those two tables for you. And then of course from the same kind of directory, go into the forms page or the forms module, and import for us. So the first one that we needed, the book form, and then we'll also create the movie form also. Yeah. So it will import that, which will satisfy this condition. It will also satisfy this condition also here. I actually wonder if it will work. Let's see. The great thing about Python, especially when you make a mistake, it's very good at letting you exactly where your error Okay, so you can go in and you can rectify that. Seems to be complaining about their author name, but I think that's something we'll fix in our later video. I don't think it's something we should kind of waste time on right now. But I'll leave it here. I want to keep these videos relatively short and release them slowly. But yeah, if you're new to this, once again, copy everything down, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for kind of watching this video, and part 7 will continue and get some output on the URL. Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel. Welcome to Iman Codes.